this remarkable story of growing up in times of war and literally being in a basement while Saddam Hussein is bombing your country.
I'm a few years old, sitting on her lap at a family party. Men with machine guns, barge through our doors, basically without even knocking, and arrest my mom as well as my aunt, who's living with us. She believed in these beautiful principles of democracy and freedom of faith and freedom of speech. I think they're still ashamed of her incarceration, where to me, I'm like, that is the most incredible thing you've ever done. And such a great role model to your daughters to stand up for themselves and stand up for freedom and for what's right.
Hi, everyone. I'm Jenna Carson.
I'm Sierra Larson.
And today we are so thrilled to have our special guest with us, Shima Bachman. Thank you so much for being here, Shima. We're so
Thank
excited.
you. Oh, I'm so excited too.
Shima is the Woodruff J Dean Professor of Law and a Distinguished Fellow at the Wheatley Institute at Brigham Young University. Shima is a nationally recognized expert on bail, prosecutors, and police, and her work explores forgiveness, prosecutorial discretion, and the role of religious institutions in criminal justice reform. Her scholarship and insights have been featured in the New York Times, Wall Street Journal, NPR, The Economist, Washington Post, Forbes, and many other outlets. She has presented her research at leading law schools such as Stanford, Cornell, Michigan, and UCLA, as well as to judges and attorneys across the country. Shima is the author of The Bail Book, a comprehensive look at bail in America's criminal justice system with Cambridge University Press, and co-author of some of the most widely used criminal law textbooks and study aids. Earlier in her career, she worked as a Fulbright senior scholar in Malawi, a litigator at Kirtland and Ellis in New York, and a clerk on the U.S. Court of Appeals for the Ninth Circuit. Beyond her academic and professional accomplishments, Shima brings a remarkable personal story. She immigrated to the U.S. as a child refugee from Iran, and today she is also a mother of 5 who enjoys yoga, pickleball, and hiking. Shima, thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you.
This remarkable story of growing up in times of war and literally being in a basement while Saddam Hussein is bombing your country. And your mom was incarcerated for her political activism. So can you start there and share a little bit about your childhood and what happened with your mom and how that relates to the work that you're doing today and the attitude that you're able to have toward people who are incarcerated?
Sure, absolutely. So yes, I grew up in Iran. My mom was politically active against the Shah of Iran. They're the king in Iran, basically before the Islamic regime took over. And she and many others felt like we want to have a more Western style democracy in Iran. We'd love to have elections. We'd love to have freedom of speech and religion. And those things mattered a lot to her. And so she graduated from college, but really was primarily an activist politically. She was at the University of Tehran, where it was a hotbed of political activism in Iran. And so she continued to work in those efforts. They actually succeeded in 1979 to oust the Shah of Iran. He left. And in that vacuum of power, there was this decision of, okay, who takes over? Well, there was many competing parties. Somebody that was found to be at the time a reasonable voice, it was the Ayatollah Khomeini. He was in France and he said, look, just everyone should come together. Let me be the first leader. We can have elections in 6 months and let people decide. We'll have our first democracy. And of course, he came over and took over, but then decided that he didn't want to actually have elections and then decided to kill all of the opposition. And so my mom at this point, she has 2 girls. My sister and I were born at this time. I'm born right at the eve of the revolution. My sister just right before it. And we were both little, but my mom has felt like she spent all her, 20s fighting for this freedom that never came. And so she continues, even as a mother, to be part of these mothers groups that they have where she's able to donate. So she donates all of her wedding gold that was given to her china, like everything that's valuable, sells it so that she can donate this money to try to oust this new government, this Islamic regime that came over that's been oppressive. It's also has similar restraints against, and this time it's not against putting the veil on or having having your Islamic religious beliefs exercised. It's actually you have to. So it's forcing people that they have to wear hijab. And so it's completely opposite problem, but also not democracy, which is what she wanted. And so she is continuing to work in this. I'm a few years old, sitting on her lap at a family party, men with machine guns, barge through our doors, basically without even knocking, and arrest my mom as well as my aunt who's living with us. And they were both politically active in the same way. She gets no trial. And as a lawyer, I teach criminal procedure, and I'm like, how could they have broken so many different constitutional protections that we have in America? But there was no knocking and announcing. They took her. There was no trial, no representation. She basically sentenced to 10 years for treason based on her activities without an opportunity to respond to any of these charges. She's put in this famous prison. It's called Evin. It actually just got bombed and recently with this little skirmish we had between Israel and Iran, but it's infamous for political dissidents, and put in there horrible conditions, no ability to sleep. She's like laying on her side on the floor as days and days. She's like there for 6 months, but their only sleeping arrangements are on the floor. There's no beds, there's no pillows, there's no proper bathrooms. I think there's maybe one bathroom for 200 people, so they get to go once, maybe twice a day, and they have a shower once or twice every a month. So it's insane, like some of the worst prison conditions I can imagine. And I can tell you how we miraculously escaped from Iran if you want to hear about that. But what really has motivated me is this idea that my mom just gave up everything. She gave up all that she had because she believed in these beautiful principles of democracy and freedom of faith and freedom of speech. And so it really motivated me and my sister, especially. So my older sister and I kind of lived through that. We lived through the war between Iran and Iraq, where, like you said, we were in the basement, with towels on our faces because Saddam would do kind of chemical weapons sometimes. And so we went through all of that. And then when we were miraculously brought to America, we felt very responsible to use this gift that we had, this freedom that we have, this of speech and of education, and to doing whatever we want to be able to try to better our society and do more to serve others. So my sister does poverty banking work for people that don't have access to banking, and I've done criminal work, doing criminal policy justice reform. Basically, my big thing is let's try to end mass incarceration and be more reasonable when it comes to with crimes in America.
So moving, your story, and I know this is just a tiny little piece of it. Please do tell us how you came to the US. How did that come about?
Yeah, it's such an amazing story. I love telling about it because it really is such a miracle, and I love to speak of miracles because God's hand is so good. But my mom, when she's in prison, so she gets out of the crazy prison called Evin, she's transferred to another more civil prison where she actually has a bed and kind of more typical to what other prisoners look like. And she said at this point she has this dream. She's 2 years into her prison sentence, has this dream, and in her dreams, you see that she's flying in an airplane above these fall colors. And somehow in her dream, she knows she's in America, but she's very confused. Like, why am I in America in this dream? I'm in prison in Iran and I have 8 more years to serve here. And so, kind of that happens. And right around that time, my dad is a neurosurgeon in Iran, working actually for the government, ironically, fighting on the front lines of the war with Iran and Iraq, doing surgeries, you know, neurosurgeries, trying to save people that are dying. It's a very long, prolonged war and such a devastating thing for both Iran and Iraq. But anyway, my dad is able to do a procedure for one of the higher up leaders of the government, and it goes well. And he says to my mom, my dad, what can I do to help you? And he's like, well, actually, my wife is in prison and my sister as well. Can you please help them? And so within 6 months of my mom having this dream, they're able to get out of prison. And then again, other miracles, but my dad is able to get a research position at UCLA for a 1-year post-residency fellowship at UCLA, which is amazing because getting out of Iran in 1986 was just, no one was getting out during the war. It was dire. And, the way it impacted me as a child is like, there was no candy to buy at the store. And I was really bugged because I remember there was candy and then the war started and it just got worse and worse. It was difficult to get like fruit. I remember he brought a banana once, like one banana that he bought for, I don't know, exorbitant amounts of money. And like we split it as a family, like everybody got one little piece of banana because it was just like, you don't get bananas in Iran during the war. So that's the kind of thing that we had. But anyway, so through miracles, we were able to get this opportunity at UCLA and get out there, one of the last planes out in August of 86. Also getting a visa in Germany was difficult, but another miracle that we got it because many people, even that got out of Iran, weren't able to get visas. We ended up in UCLA, and within a few months of being there, there's a nurse who is Christian, and she's a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, and she has the spirit she describes later, and we're good friends, so she's told me this after, but several times the spirit tells her, you should talk to this man about your church. And she ignores it the first two times. The third time, she finally goes up to him. He's at a water fountain and says, hey, would you guys like to go to my Christmas party? And we're new immigrants. We have no friends. We're like, absolutely, we'd love to come to your Christmas party. And we go to a Christmas party. My mom decides to become a Christian, even though she isn't sure if we're going to be able to stay in America. She decides that she wants to convert to Christianity and gets baptized into the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, not knowing if she's going to get killed when we go back, but very insistent to my dad, like, let's do everything we can to stay here. I really don't want to get killed when I go back to Iran. And also my dad's thinking, I have 3 daughters at the time. So we had my little sister as well when we came from Iran. There's 3 of us girls. And he's like, how can I bring my daughters back to a war-torn Iran and a country where they wouldn't have the freedoms that they would in America? So they had their unique motivations, but both of them were very motivated. And through miracles, my dad was able to certify and pass the tests that were necessary to stay in the US.
That's so remarkable. And I want to point out, because you said this in a different podcast, that the religious oppression was even more life-threatening than the political oppression. So, or rather, I should word this like the oppression toward people who were leaving Islam and converting to Christianity. That was a life or death scenario.
Absolutely.
Whereas
Yes,
with political opposition, it was like incarceration usually, right?
exactly.
So, I mean, so
Yes,
your mom was so drawn to Christianity and would get baptized when it really could be life or death is pretty incredible.
absolutely. And yes, it's, the Islamic Republic of Iran, they apply the doctrines of the Quran as a 1400. And so those doctrines require if somebody's converting from a religion, from Islam, that you can punish them by death. And so this is a sentence that they could carry out if she was to go back. That's why she knew that and was very clear that she could not go back.
Wow. Wow. So you all stay in California. You were in California and you grow up, and when did you start realizing the problem of mass incarceration is something that you wanted to take on?
Yeah. So we moved around about between California, Las Vegas, Pennsylvania, New York. But I ended up in New York. That's where I kind of went to high school and middle school. But yeah, I always felt like I needed to do something to better this country. I had these opportunities that nobody else in my family got. I felt very guilty. My cousins are left in, war-torn Iran. I'm in America. So I remember when it was time in high school to pick my college major. I know they give it to you way too early. You're like, I don't know what I'm going to major, but I remember writing down sociology because I was like, I want to help society. What can I do? How does that? So then once I got into college, I realized I just want to do something to help solve social problems. And in college, I was really interested in violence against women and rape, and so I studied that. So the criminal aspect of things was very interesting to me. I was working on it more on the victim side. And then when I got to law school, I actually didn't like criminal law because the way it's taught is very statutory. It didn't appeal. But when I did get out of law school and I did my clerkship, some of the most compelling cases were criminal ones where I felt like, oh, I just like really care about this outcome. These are real people and, a victim and a perpetrator. And so I cared a lot about it. And then when I went to my law firm, those are the cases that really appealed to me. I did some prison work. So prison litigation, helping a Jewish inmate get this right to pray, where you and I can connect because we worked with the prison chaplains. I think we deposed the prison chaplain at one point, trying to understand why they wouldn't allow our poor Jewish client to have a room to pray in where he couldn't pray in his cell because it's unclean according to Jewish law. And but I just was drawn to that. And then I had the opportunity to do a Fulbright, and that was all on pretrial detention. Let me figure out how we can get some of these people that are detained in jail for a year or 6 months without any charge, no lawyers, get them out quicker, get them representation. And so it kind of just, I don't know, it's like the least among us, right? We learn about that in the scriptures, like, let us help those who are the least among us. I know some help the elderly or the sick or the homeless. I mean, for me, I was just really drawn to those that were incarcerated, probably because of my mom's experience having been treated unfairly without constitutional protections, without a lawyer, without any sort of due process as we love to have in America. And so I think I was feeling like when, after I returned from Malawi, seeing the detention conditions there, in a lot of ways, they were in some ways better off than we were because they didn't have these prolonged sentences, 10 years, 20 years. They were detained pre-trial, but their sentences were a lot shorter once they were adjudicated. And so I started to think, gosh, we are in a really bad place with incarceration in America. And, I wanted to do something about it and started with pretrial, but then it's just been kind of looking at the whole system, police, prosecutors, where can we make a difference? I believe in arresting people and holding them accountable for crimes when they harm society, trying to get them to change. But punishment for the sake of punishment doesn't make sense to me in this day and age. When there are ways to rehabilitate, there's proven ways to get people to change and stop committing crimes. For the most part, there's a small group that maybe need to be incarcerated. You and I, Jenna, could talk about this for days, I'm sure, because you've dealt a lot with the incarcerated too. But anyway,
Yeah. I'm just sitting here in awe of your story, and one thing that's really standing out to me is your mom and
mm,
her just obviously being this, like, strong, like, amazing, fiery, just awesome woman, and how that kind of translated to you. And I'm just really curious about your relationship with your mom and what you've seen and how that inspired you and what she instilled in you and how. And I want to touch there before we move on to, like, obviously the incarcerated too, but I just don't want to skip that because that is
wow.
amazing to me.
Yeah, she really is. You could kind of see her behind me in her wedding pictures right behind me, but she is a powerhouse of a person, but in a, in kind of a way of like the way Jesus was, she's very meek. If you meet her, people are always like, that's surprising that that's your mom because they think of her and they think she's going to be the loudest person in the room or the one that has all these opinions about politics. And she doesn't. She's very humble. She's very meek. She listens first. She's very open to change her mind and be proven wrong. But at the same time, she has these convictions and she, really cares about people and loves them and is willing to sacrifice everything of her own for the betterment of her family and her culture. So for my sister and I, it was like not even a question. She was such a role model for us growing up. I love that you asked that because in our culture and in our family, it was very shameful that she had gone to prison and no one even still talks about it, you guys. It's not a thing like, "Well, go Narima, like you were so amazing. You fought for freedom that we all believe in now." And a lot of my family has since immigrated to America and appreciates these freedoms today. But I don't think like my sister and I, anyone really appreciates how brave it was for her. I think they're still ashamed of her incarceration, where to me, I'm like, that is the most incredible thing you've ever done, and such a great role model to your daughters to stand up for themselves and stand up for freedom and for what's right. And so I love that you asked that. Thank you for that question because I love to talk about what she's taught us because it's changed us. And you think of my older sisters and I, we're like activists in those ways, like I find myself like a Christian activist in a lot of ways. Like I'm really motivated by my faith to help those who are incarcerated, the least among us. And my sister in her way with her work is like so passionate about helping poor people get banking and access to property and all these things. So yeah, it's really impacted us and it's all directly as a result of my mom and her bravery.
I thank you so much for clarifying the character of your mother because You said meekness, and I've been thinking about meekness this week. So I'm so glad you used that word
Mhm.
because I've been thinking about the strength of meekness and the restraint, the powerful restraint that meekness is. And a lot of times, we think we have to be brazen to
Mhm.
do these great things. And sometimes we do. There's a time and place for that. But so much is done through meekness, through listening and understanding and hearing and being okay being wrong, but also having your convictions and sacrificing for those convictions. And not in a passive, post, not in a passive post, but in a real way. If it's something that you really care about, that it's something you're willing to sacrifice for. And I love that you gave that example of your mom because she, personifies that so well from what you're saying. And oh, she's like my new hero now. It's like awesome.
Oh, thank you. She's my hero still. I am still in awe of her. Honestly, she's one of the most incredible humans I know, and it's a joy to have been her daughter. None of us come close. We always and your mom is so good. You're like, how could I ever even get close to how good you are? But we try.
I'm sure she's extremely proud of you.
So
I wonder, we should have her on the podcast, but we can talk
you
about that.
should. Yes, you should. You totally should.
So, Shima, while we could talk so much about policy, right, and the problem of mass incarceration, I'd like to really focus on the spiritual side of healing. As a country, you've spoken on other podcasts how we as a country, we incarcerate more individuals than any other nation per capita, and California itself does. And
Mhm.
so it's a huge problem, and I think that there's a deeper spiritual illness, and I'm curious your thoughts on this. I think there's a spiritual illness that leads to this mass incarceration, and also I think that there's an anecdote, there's medicine, and you've talked about forgiveness and systemic absolution. So can we dive into these themes and hear your thoughts on some of the medicine for healing this wound, right? That I mean, whether or not we know it and see it, I think it affects all of us because we're all connected. Thanks for joining us for part 1 of this powerful episode with Shima. Make sure to tune in for part 2 next week, where we discuss the topic of forgiveness and how forgiveness can change our lives and our communities. I'm Jenna Carson,
I'm Sierra Larson.
and we hope you follow the peace.